For most of this week, I've been playing Star Wars Battlefront 2. Now you may or may not wonder why. Well, I'm working on a video series of sorts and needed gameplay of this live service multiplayer experience in present day. Anyway, as I said on Twitter, I really am blown away at how enjoyable of an experience this has become. I genuinely think it's arguably the best AAA multiplayer game I've played as of late. But what's such a shame is you cannot erase the past, the greed and incompetence of publisher Electronic Arts at launch. And it is ultimately what this game will be remembered for, and honestly, I think I'm okay with that. Star Wars Battlefront 2's disastrous release represented an important moment for this industry, a wake-up call for the suits at the top, and a gaming issue that finally hit the radar of people outside of gaming. But even now, here in 2020, not much has changed, at least yet. This gaming industry has just become a lot more careful, trying to create an image for government bodies that is of a gaming industry that is not predatory, manipulative, or exploitative. But we all know, based on the various patents and leaks, that the so-called leaders of this industry are scheming every single day for a future in which they can get away with any and everything. This does pave perfectly into today's discussion, because we are going to be breaking down recent news that reaffirms exactly why we cannot get an innovative Star Wars experience from Electronic Arts. Additionally, we also have Bethesda showing their true greedy colors, Activision Blizzard's newest Warcraft disaster, Rockstar's parent company yet again using intimidation tactics to shut down a mod, and CD Projekt Red taking over Europe and taking a stand yet again for gamers with yet another pro-consumer decision. So a lot to go over, but as usual, if you do go on to enjoy this content and want to show your support for gaming news coverage like this, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing for more, and turning notifications on so you do not miss out on any new videos. Nonetheless, and probably the least surprising news that we've gotten so far this year, Electronic Arts has canceled yet another Star Wars game. This was something that was reported on earlier this week. I kind of held off on discussing this just because this isn't too surprising. Electronic Arts is following the trends. They're following what makes financially the most sense, which unfortunately, innovation and creativity, it's just not going to happen under them. Star Wars Battlefront, the 2015 installment, notoriously was rushed out the door, and it lacked content. Star Wars Battlefront 2, we had the whole loot box debacle, and even Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which I really did enjoy, was very unoriginal in a lot of aspects. And a lot of people have been hunting, or maybe wanting, a massive Star Wars experience, something that's open world, maybe like The Mandalorian. But the thing is, under Electronic Arts, that's not going to happen. But it seems like EA Studios have been trying to bring some ambitious ideas to the table. It's just, it doesn't work for EA leadership, who, unfortunately, they just don't want to bring these experiences to us. Now here we have a report coming from Kotaku's Jason Schreier. EA canceled a Star Wars Battlefront spin-off last year. Last spring, Electronic Arts canceled a planned spin-off of its popular Star Wars Battlefront series, the third Star Wars game that the publisher had axed since 2017. This latest game, codenamed Viking, was originally envisioned for release in fall 2020 alongside the next generation of consoles, but once it became clear to EA's executives that the timeline was unrealistic, Viking was no more. In October 2017, EA notoriously shut down Visceral Games and canceled Project Ragtag, and the art assets ended up going to EA Vancouver for a brand new open-world Star Wars game. The second game, which was codenamed Orca, was in development all throughout 2018 until again Electronic Arts canceled that. And then this project eventually became this third game called Viking, and it was designed as a spin-off of the Star Wars Battlefront series with open-world elements, but again, this was an ambitious project. It was going to be focused on story and characters, and immediately, unfortunately, the developer Criterion, one of the developers on this, they just realized it wasn't going to work out, and as Kotaku's Jason Schreier reports, it soon became clear that Viking would never be finished in just a year and a half, and EA's executives had no interest in extending the timeline. Viking was cancelled in the first half of 2019, although this news has gone unreported until now. That fall 2020 financial hole will go unfilled. So what's next is, likely a smaller Star Wars project. Well, who knows what that's going to look like. It's coming from EA Motive, and then we also have a Jedi Fallen Order sequel from Respawn Entertainment. So there are some good Star Wars stuff coming from Electronic Arts, but I think years ago when that Star Wars deal was announced, this was when BioWare was still in good graces for the most part. I think a lot of people expected we would have at least one really grand Star Wars experience, but that has not happened, and unfortunately it just doesn't look like it will ever happen with Electronic Arts having exclusive rights to make Star Wars games. Now, what I will say is that EA's executives definitely are following the trends, what financially makes the most sense, although it definitely is disappointing hearing about all these innovative ideas that just will never see the light of day. But the difference between Electronic Arts and other developers like Rockstar Games and CD Projekt Red is that they invest time in these projects like Red Dead Redemption 2 and the soon-to-be released Cyberpunk 2077. These games have been given 7 years of development and hundreds of millions of dollars, tons of resources invested into creating innovative games that have been just massive experiences. Electronic Arts could deliver something like that. They could, but they're just not giving developers the resources and time needed to do that, which is just so disappointing and is exactly why I do think Electronic Arts does not deserve to have exclusive rights to make Star Wars games. Now, what is very interesting is something that Jason Schreier actually responded to me on Twitter about, and I was talking about the recent rumor about Star Wars KOTOR getting a remake, and Jason Schreier pretty much said that the rumor was not false, but he said it was not going to be something coming from necessarily Electronic Arts. So what does that exactly mean? It could be an outside studio, could it be Obsidian Entertainment, somebody who is familiar with the KOTOR series? I'm not sure if that's possible under Microsoft, but I'm definitely intrigued, and I really do hope that we see some Star Wars games not from Electronic Arts, because it's time, it really is. With all these cancellations, it's just so demoralizing. But nonetheless, let's again move on to our next subject, which is Bethesda Game Studios. And I could also go over Fallout 76, the latest, because the game is still a mess. Every day it seems like there's a new exploit or new bug. Like right now, Kotaku reported this a few days ago. Fallout 76 players keep crashing servers to duplicate the game's strongest armor. Seems like a story that came from about a year ago, but no, it's present day, and this is just, it repeats. These stories seem like they always repeat because the problems seem to keep on striking Fallout 76. But something that I found very interesting was that Bethesda was joining Activision Blizzard by pulling its games from Nvidia's GeForce Now streaming service. And I think Forbes perfectly summed up what's actually happening here and kind of the hypocrisy of this AAA games industry. Forbes writing, "How many times have you come across someone from the video game industry saying something like, 'We're all about the players. We want to bring you the games you love wherever, whenever, with whomever, and in whatever platform you want.' Sometimes it rings true, other times not so much." Hearing this kind of industry boiler speak is a good time to keep in mind that actions speak louder than words. The recent kerfuffle between GeForce Now on one side and Activision Blizzard and Bethesda on the other side is a case in point. I will also mention that I do kind of find it hilarious that Bethesda, this is something they did a while ago, that they stand for single player games until they just jumped on the whole live service bandwagon. But anyway, getting back to this Forbes article, they continued, again summing up my thoughts. Why the games were pulled has not been made clear by either the publishers or Nvidia. One obvious possibility is the publishers want Nvidia to pay them for the privilege of streaming their games. Greed over everything, that's what this AAA gaming industry truly represents. Never mind that players have already bought the games that are being streamed, these publishers want to be paid again if players want to play their games on a different platform. Another idea that has been floated is that Activision Blizzard may have a secret deal with Google for Google Stadia to make their games exclusives. And I said this before, I believe in my last video discussing this subject, but again, this is just the latest, I guess you could call it, streaming war that's going to be coming in the future. Is it going to be Google versus Nvidia versus Microsoft? Who knows, but I truly am kind of getting tired of these little wars that we have, whether it be the console war, streaming war, the Epic Store versus Steam, but I guess that's just what it's always going to be about. It's always going to be a platform trying to one-up the other one. I do find this kind of disappointing for players because it really is a betrayal for all those who invested money. This is an article coming from gamesindustry.biz which points out the problem that some players are dealing with now. As with the Activision announcement, complaints on the Bethesda forum post reveal that some players purchase games purely for use via GeForce Now, lacking the necessary hardware to run these games natively. It's truly astonishing that this AAA gaming industry constantly says they want to bring people together, and then suddenly without any warning they just remove their games from a certain platform and that's that. But anyway, that's just the latest with Nvidia GeForce Now, and they honestly are preparing for more publishers to pull out, and what's next is probably negotiations with Google, with Nvidia, and all other publishers to see who will be the ultimate streaming power of the future, I guess. Anyway, we move next to Blizzard Entertainment, who has, well, they are embroiled in another debacle, this time surrounding a recent esports event. And before we proceed to the actual disaster, I just want to bring up a comment coming from Blizzard Entertainment. This was an interview done with Shack News in which one of the developers said, "So we feel that this is a great opportunity for us to show off how cool this game is." They're talking about Warcraft 3 Reforged, how cool it has always been, but also show it in high resolution, show it in a format that people are more used to seeing when they tune into a modern Twitch stream. So we think this is a good situation for us to show how good this game is and how awesome the competitors are. Now, the one problem with that is the event just ended up being an unmitigated disaster, as CCN reports blame Blizzard's screw-up for Warcraft 3 Pro's unexpected defeat. Disconnection issues plagued this past weekend's DreamHack Anaheim Warcraft 3 event, robbing pro player Thorazane of a decisive win. Essentially what happened was that these two pro players, Thorazane and Moon, were tied in the quarterfinals 1-1, and it looked like Thorazane was headed for victory in the final round.
We have no Breath of Fire, by the way. It is Drunken Haze, so big mischance on these Dragonhawks and a disconnect.
I'm gonna assume Thorazane dropped, but I feel like Moon was on the way to holding this attack. Oof.
Ooh, wow.
But due to a desync bug, the game disconnected, and by tournament rules, it had to be restarted. So they did that, and they also reverted the graphics down to the classic version of Warcraft 3. And it looked like, again, Thorazane was headed for victory in this restarted rounds, but unfortunately, again, the game disconnected.
With Brilliance Aura first, so no Water Elementals yet. Moon decides to go for the Panda.
He's like, yeah, Mountain King already has enough mana. I don't need a Blood Mage. I don't need you. You're benched.
Once this...
And looks like another drop just happened.
Oh, wow.
As Thorazane, I kind of like his position here in this game.
Again, yeah.
And finally we get to the third time they did this round, and at that point Moon had learned from the past two rounds that he was about to lose, and he went on to be victorious. This is again just a bad look for Warcraft 3 Reforged, which just has been embroiled in disaster since it launched. And there's also been some other reports emerging from this tournament that says that other pro players also suffered the same trouble, and it cost a lot of pro players wins. And as CCN reported, pro players are pissed at Blizzard for letting this happen, and as CCN concluded, Blizzard's inability to offer a stable build for a professional level offline competition is the latest chapter in the Warcraft 3 Reforged troubled journey. The events at DreamHack won't come as a surprise to anyone who's followed Warcraft 3 Reforged's disastrous launch. Performance issues and missing features left many players disappointed by the game, prompting a wave of refunds. And this is again just another bad look for Blizzard Entertainment, who this has just been the trend for the last number of months, and unfortunately I just expect more chaos to come in the future, because that's just what modern day Blizzard is all about, like much of this AAA gaming industry, unfortunately. But yeah, this is yet another high profile failure for Warcraft 3 Reforged, and it just again is not a good look for what Blizzard is and what they have become, and it doesn't exactly inspire faith for the future of this company. But we now move on to our last few remaining news topics, and this one's pretty big. Red Dead Redemption 2 has a hot coffee mod, and Take-Two wants it gone, and it looks like they have gotten their wish. Now you may wonder, why is this big? Well, Take-Two Interactive, the parent company of Rockstar Games and 2K Games, has a pretty big reputation with using intimidation tactics to get what they want. Now what do these intimidation tactics look like? Well, they send private investigators to people's houses, threatening them with legal action, and much more. That was something that we saw a number of months ago with a Borderlands 3 YouTuber. They had somebody pop up at their house, they threatened them, and within days, their whole channel, their whole career was ruined. It was gone because Take-Two filed over 100 false DMCA takedowns, and the YouTuber in particular, he just gave up and he moved on. And that's something that has been documented over the years. They did this with a Red Dead Redemption 1 modder. They did the same thing, and they also ended up filing a $500,000 lawsuit. And years before that, Grand Theft Auto 5 modders faced the same thing, but at that time, thankfully, the modding community came together and mainstream media bashed Take-Two Interactive for their aggressive actions. And eventually, Take-Two and Rockstar bended the knee, but here now, they're again doing this, and I think we're going to keep on seeing this in the future with mods, which is definitely it's concerning. Let's get into this what's actually happening. Now, if you don't know what the hot coffee mod situation is, about 15 years ago, a lot of Karens, government officials, lobbyists became very angry that hidden within Grand Theft Auto San Andreas code was simulated adult fun scenes, pretty much. That's the PG way of describing it. But at that time, that led to massive scrutiny of this AAA video game industry and of Rockstar Games. And it was also around the time where Jack Thompson led his failed campaign or his failed crusade of the video game industry. But yeah, there was massive implications from that situation. So somebody made a similar thing for Red Dead Redemption 2, and this is a report coming from PC Gamer on what exactly this new hot coffee mod included. Mod maker Unlosing confirmed with PC Games and that a Rockstar rep did in fact ask them to take it down, but he argued back that it doesn't actually break any rules. The mod doesn't contain any nudity or nude models and only uses assets that are still in the game. The animations are from the drunk bar mission with Lenny, which are still in the game, and the moaning noises are simply the sounds the characters' models make when they get injured. Also, they mention online services, however, this mod is only available for single player. And I will mention this new hot coffee mod it's not very good in quality, but it's no longer available. It has been taken down, so Take-Two's intimidation tactics have once again worked. So, was this actually legal? This is an article coming from GameDaily.biz who talked with lawyers about this situation. Richard Hogue, attorney at Hogue Law in Michigan, said that Unlosing's mod is clearly in violation of Rockstar's EULA, which states that software may not be copied, reproduced, altered, modified, or distributed in any manner or medium in whole or in part without prior written consent from the licensor, which is Rockstar Games or Take-Two Interactive. Now, another lawyer pointed out that some publishers and developers choose to look the other way. They do this probably either because of a business calculation that the cost to enforce their rights outweighs the benefits, or that the mods actually generate interest in the game itself to their benefit. This kind of tolerated infringement is not really legal doctrine, it's business decision making. Modders and increasingly streamers playing with mods should not assume that they will be tolerated. And finally, so why does Rockstar allow modding to exist? Because it's good for business. PC players have expectations about what can be done with games that they purchase, and failing to meet that expectation could cause Rockstar an issue. Further, PC players have shown that games with modifications can have long lifespans and generally make their publisher more money. For example, Skyrim. And then Hogue would continue saying EULAs exist as a way for publishers to drop the hammer on something they feel might cost them business, as is the case with this hot coffee mod. Now, I do kind of find it very concerning that Rockstar is policing what is right and wrong in terms of modding, and what this likely will lead to is even worse in terms of modding for Red Dead, but I do find it very interesting that they're monitoring what type of mods are being created and what they find is okay or not okay. So another great Rockstar YouTuber actually did cover this situation previously, this being Swegta, and he did get the official response from Rockstar's lawyers. I believe the modder showed him what was said specifically. And Rockstar or Take-Two Interactive seems to take primary issue with the adult aspect of this mod. So I'm very concerned with how this company has gone about the treatment of modders, and additionally why they're policing stuff like this, especially considering the content that is in games like Grand Theft Auto 5. So not really understanding the situation, but this is a trend. Take-Two Interactive certainly will go out of their way to make sure they get what they want. But finally we move on to our last subject, and this is finally something positive, something good with this AAA gaming industry. You know, recently we talked about a garbage Image article that was a hit piece directed at CD Projekt Red. What we're talking about right now, we're about to go over with Cyberpunk 2077, is exactly why I like CD Projekt Red. These are the pro-consumer actions that I feel like more companies need to embrace, and it's great that we have a company like CDPR setting an example, and they're right now having massive success. As this report coming from PocketGamer.biz says, Witcher developer CD Projekt Red becomes second biggest games company in Europe. The Polish games firm has now been valued at $8 billion, with only French publisher Ubisoft in front at an estimated worth of $9.52 billion. There are multiple reasons for this increased valuation, but this number is primarily known to the company's take on the Witcher franchise, or primarily down to the company's take on the Witcher franchise, as well as its highly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077 title. It really is great to see the company succeeding, and hopefully this shows this AAA gaming industry that greed is not the only way to make it. And I think that this kind of proves that the Electronic Arts or Activision Blizzard way of going about business is BS. You can go about it without unsustainable greed. Now, what I do like even furthermore is more pro-consumer actions for their upcoming game Cyberpunk 2077. I've been talking about this for the last number of years. I've complimented CDPR for good reason, because they've done a lot of good things for consumers or players. Now, Xbox announced that the Xbox Series X will be bringing the next generation of compatibility. You'll be able to play thousands of games across 4 generations that look and feel better than ever. They're also going to have smart delivery, which guarantees you'll play the best version of your game for your Xbox. And this is where CDPR came in with a bombshell that made a lot of people happy. Gamers should never be forced to purchase the same game twice or pay for upgrades. Owners of Cyberpunk 2077 for Xbox One will receive the Xbox Series X upgrade for free when available. And I said this under in a comment, you just love to see it. But this really is a message to this AAA gaming industry, and it also kind of puts the pressure on other companies who did this last generation, from the Activision Blizzards to the Rockstar games to the Electronic Arts, selling the same game twice. That was one of the reasons why Grand Theft Auto 5 has become one of the largest games ever in terms of sales. It's because the game was bought by a lot of people for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and then people had to end up buying it again for the PS4 and Xbox One. But as we approach this next generation of the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, I applaud the pro-consumer decision-making of CD Projekt Red and Xbox, something that will save gamers a lot of money. And hopefully, at the very least, this puts pressure on all of the other various companies of this AAA industry to do the right thing for players. Now, to circle back to something I said to start this video, much of this industry loves to pretend like they care, after being caught implementing horrendous monetization schemes. I just certainly love the PR speak and the speeches that they try to give. Like even right now, you have some foolish Wall Street analysts declaring Electronic Arts is back in the good graces of gamers. They've repaired their brand image and have adapted to what gamers want. Not my words, obviously, but we all know that is not the truth. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is indeed better, but FIFA Ultimate Team is still a monetization dumpster fire that EA executives actively are discussing how they can adapt that model to other franchises without drawing the enormous backlash like they did in 2017. Actions speak louder than words, which is why I constantly praise a company like CD Projekt Red, because they have been for the most part consistent with their mission of being for gamers, while Electronic Arts on the other hand has been pretty much the opposite. I do not trust that company, and just know that eventually we'll be discussing their next monetization scheme or plan, which will likely or hopefully blow up in their face again. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on all of the gaming news we went over down the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games, and again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.